for the first time. You
Bring out the holy hand grenade.
It's always fun to watch someone watch that for the first time because they're like, I don't get it. No, you won't get it till like the third or fourth time. Right. When it's fun to quote it, that's when it's funny.
My son watched Monty Python.
We're live, guys.
Holy Grail for the first time.
All right, here we go.
All right. Callie, you want to probably switch to presentation mode there. Beautiful.
Oh, here's some people.
Welcome all. As you're joining us, we will give everybody a minute or so to get their audio all set up, and then we will begin. All right. We may have a few more join us in a moment, but we will go ahead and get started. Welcome to another Ask Me Anything session with the Pragmatic Institute instructor. It is so good to have you all here. Welcome. I'm Eddie Gordon, courseware designer for Pragmatic Institute, and today's host. Just a reminder at the top, if you are able and comfortable to do it, turn your video on for us. We love to see your faces, and we could all use some more human interaction these days for sure. So do that if you can. And then of course, this is an Ask Me Anything session. So if you have come with questions, you have come to the right place. We've got answers for you. We do have some pre-submitted questions already to kick us off, but feel free to put any questions in the chat. You can send those either to everyone in the group if you like, or you can send them just to me, Eddie Gordon, the host, and I will kick those over to our instructor as they come up. But just want to mention one other thing before we get started. We have to give a plug. We're very excited for our brand new Pragmatic Institute online community, the Pragmatic Alumni Community, or PAC for the cool kids out there is what we call it. This is a brand new resource of curated library content, peer discussions, member exclusive events where you will be able to find answers to all things product. We're so excited about it. If you happen to have missed our open house, there is still a beautiful web page with some videos on it that will give you an idea of all of the cool resources that are available there. Find that at pragmaticinstitute.com/community. And I believe there is still a 30% off discount available for anybody jumping on that bargain early on. So definitely get in on that action. And with that, it is time to introduce to you today's Pragmatic Institute instructor extraordinaire, Mr. Todd Middlebrook. How you doing, Todd?
I'm doing great, Eddie. You know, Eddie, you and I have been working with each other for a while, and up until today, I didn't realize that you had a past in being a radio DJ. This comes really natural.
It's that high school theater training, man. It comes in handy in the most unexpected places. That's what happens.
Good to be here.
Well, as I said, we've got a few pre-submitted questions, but folks, if you have questions, stick them over in the chat and we will get to those as well. How about I toss you these first couple we've got here, Todd? Are you in the question answering mood?
I am. Otherwise, it'd be wasting time.
It would be a very short session if you were not. Understood. Our first question today comes from Heather, who asks, what is the best way to organize and prioritize your backlog, considering new ideas or features come from numerous sources? She says, we are looking for a good process to understanding which features are best for customers and how to give them a voice during prioritization. Also, part two, how many customers should agree with ideas or changes before we make a decision to move forward? Did you get all that, Todd?
I did. That's quite the onion. We'll have to unpeel.
Yeah, good.
Try to hit all those, but boy, I bet this is one that many product professionals can relate to. Those feature ideas. What could we do for the product? We end up having a list of things that we can do from many different sources. Ideas that have come maybe internally, ideas that have come from your executives, ideas that come from your developers or your engineers. Of course, ideas that maybe have been surfaced by your sales teams while they're out there selling to new people. And then, of course, a lot of those ideas come from your customers that are already using your product. Through some mechanism like enhancement request or some type of feedback session. But all in all, we end up creating these very long list of things that we could do. Of course, the struggle is figuring out what should we do, right? We could do all of these things, but we can't do them all. So that word prioritization, we've got to prioritize. And in order to prioritize, it really goes back to, do you know what the business objectives are that you're trying to achieve with your product? There's a lot of different things that we could do with the product. Obviously, if we prioritize solving the problems that have surfaced from our existing customers or new feature ideas, that will probably make them very happy if we do that. And they'll probably be very likely to remain our customers. Next time they have to re-up their subscription or buy that next license agreement, they probably feel like that their needs have been met, they've been heard. So that would be one objective that we might have. However, we may have different objectives or combination objectives. What if we don't just want to keep our existing customers and retain them, we'd like to sell this to new people, new organizations. Okay, well, are those new people or organizations within your existing market segment? Is that where you're wanting to grow? Are you wanting to grow by stealing market share from your existing customer or your competitor customers? Are you wanting to go into a new market segment that you've never gone after before? We've got to know what those business objectives are. And then we can take that knowledge and then prioritize. Some things are going to line up with helping you achieve those goals. If we wanted to have a primary business objective to win new customers in our market segment, I would probably prioritize more highly the problems that we have found that are unique to that new part of our market segment higher than the requests from my existing customers. I would not say in a binary fashion, do all of these and none of those, but probably going to put more of our investment in the things that will help us unlock those untapped potentials in the market. So I would challenge you to go back to what is the business plan for the product? What are the business objectives? And then go back and use that as your filter of your backlog. Some things may be completely out of line with what we're trying to achieve. And it'll allow you to filter and then ultimately prioritize and rationalize your future releases. And of course, remember, business objectives are not fixed. They're not in granite. So we may have a different objective for the next release, a different objective for the following release. So that prioritization scheme that you end up defining should evolve as the business objectives evolve themselves. If I recall, there was another subsection of that question about giving customers an opportunity to provide feedback. And what I don't know, did you say the name was Heather?
It's Heather, yeah.
What I don't know is how Heather is using the word customer. Does she mean literally our customer? how do we give them ability to provide us feedback, or whether that's a synonym for how do we give the market an opportunity to provide us feedback.
Interesting.
If it's customers, we tend to have we can host customer programs to provide feedback, whether that's open-ended feedback, bringing together users like in a user conference or forum. Who knows, of course, these days it'll probably be on Zoom or on WebEx, but hosting a session like this and saying, hey, as customers and users of our product, what are the key things that you guys want, and be very open and discover that. Or maybe you're trying to get feedback about ideas that you have that are preconceived, like your roadmap or new features that you're considering adding. Well, you can go get a select number of customers and test it with them. Hey, if we added X and Y and Z, would that be valuable for you? Don't just ask one, ask a handful of those and try to get a pattern. If you feel like that feedback is sufficient, maybe you can take some action on it. However, if those ideas are really expensive or really risky, so you better make sure that you're going to get it right. Maybe you can feel that you found a pattern, and then maybe you could turn to like a survey and survey the broader population and see if you get more of a statistically relevant sample size to reply back. You might be more comfortable with that answer. I hate jumping to doing a lot of deep research because not everything deserves that. For some things, they're small, some things are quick. Maybe just asking a handful would be sufficient amounts of research. If by customer you mean how do we get feedback from the broader market, now you're really speaking to the heart of a pragmatic instructor, and that is going out and listening to your market, going out and interviewing them about your product, of course, but if you're going in to talk to non-customers, you really want to understand them and their problems better without bringing in the bias of your product. But this can help you discover, what is it you need to do to your product in order to make new customers to want to buy it, or what do you need to do to your product differently to make it appealing to that new market segment? Because those new customers or new market segments are not the same people as your existing customers. They're slightly different, even if demographically they look the same. If they haven't bought a product like yours today, well, you've got to figure out why and what you need to do differently to make them want to buy it. So, of course, at Pragmatic, this style of going out and discovering and listening to our market, we call it NAHITO. That's an acronym that stands for Nothing Important Happens in the Office. We have a lot of ideas in the office, but to help us make the right decisions, we need to get out of the office, even if it's virtual, and listen to the market, and they'll help you decide what you should do for your product. They can provide you feedback about whether that's the right direction to take, or whether they will offer you a different direction, perhaps that you didn't even think of in advance. A lot to be gained by listening to your market.
Todd, what are the potential differences between two features, one that was developed by doing what you just said, listening to the market, observing them, and the other feature which was developed because somebody specifically asked for that feature? What are the differences in those two potential features?
Well, so what we often do, parties inside of our organization, it could be a salesperson, could be an executive, could be a support, it doesn't really matter. Talk to customer X, and customer X said, we would like you to do the following in the product. We often jump to the conclusion that that one voice represents the rest of the market.
Right.
It may, but it may not. What we want to do is, if those things are brought to us, if you're a consulting company, you're building a service, or maybe you're an outsourcer, someone's hired you to build something for them. Your goal is to make that one customer happy. Most of us are trying to build products for the market. We want to build a product once and sell it or to many different people. So there's a difference between being customer driven and market driven. So we can listen to customers, but we want to ask ourselves, is this a pattern or is this a one-off? And so we can take the ideas that are brought to us by customers and go, oh, I never thought of that. Let me go ask other customers or go ask other members of the market. Is that something that they would want and whether it would be valuable to them?
Joan just asked a related question. She says, how do you approach innovation that goes beyond the specific ideas that customers or customers' competitors are presenting to you? Because often customers think within the box of the solution that we already produce. So they may say, your product is great if you put a button right here for this, right? When in reality, the best solution might be not the same product. How do you think outside that box, to use the cliche?
Absolutely. And it's one of the dangers of always soliciting feedback or relying on the feedback of customers. The language that Joan used was they see you in the box. The language I've always used is all the feedback they provide you is through the lens of the product they already bought from you.
Mm-hmm.
So customers are really good at giving you incremental improvements to the product they already bought from you. You know, add that widget, add that button, add an extra report, that type of thing. What they're not good at is offering you feedback on something unrelated to the product or in their mind, not directly associated with the product. And this is where going out and having open-ended conversations with customers or other representatives of the market outside of the context of your product. The point of the conversation is learning about them, their job, their roles, the challenges that they encounter on a daily basis. Regardless of whether we're not talking about your product, we're talking about them, learning about them. They may give you ideas that you could add to the product. They may give you ideas that, based on these dialogues, that may result in a new product. But there's another part of that question is, what about those innovative ideas? You can't rely on them to give you those innovative ideas because it's always that product feedback. You can find innovative ideas through the discovery that I just mentioned, as long as the conversation's not about your product. But that's hard. A lot of the innovation is going to come from your brilliant ideas within your company. But what I don't want you to do is assume that they are brilliant ideas. If you think they're brilliant, what you can do is go talk to some, again, representatives of your target market and say, you can build a prototype if you want. Don't spend too much time, mock it up, wireframe, or put a PowerPoint slide up. Turns out, although people aren't good at telling you what to do innovatively, they are good at hearing, seeing, getting a description of your innovative idea. And if you think about it, we all do this. Anytime a product idea is presented to you, whether it's an existing product or a proposed product, you hear about it or you see what it does. We all, in the back of our heads, go, would I use that? Does that make sense? Is that an improvement over the way I do that today? So people are good at taking the innovative idea and tell you whether they see value in it. Would it be useful for them? Would it be more useful than perhaps the way they do it today? So it's a way of, if you would like, acid testing the innovative idea before you go build it. See, a lot of people, a lot of you may be accustomed to the lean startup ideas. They propose what I just described. Let's create some type of prototype and get this feedback. The problem I see is how people often implement this idea is they will go build the product, then they go solicit the feedback. And what do you think happens when the feedback is negative? Oh, I don't see the value in that. I would never use that. I can tell you what I've seen. People all of a sudden start poking holes in, well, you asked the wrong people. Or my favorite response is, they don't know what they want. They're not technical enough. They don't see the brilliance of what we, hey, if they don't see the brilliance in it now, if they don't see the applicability of it now, but often if we've invested too much time in developing it, we're not willing to walk away from it. So that's why I prefer doing a PowerPoint deck or a mock-up to solicit that feedback, whether it's a good innovative idea or not.
And it's interesting because, you know, if they are in fact viewing the product through this lens of the existing product, like we were just talking about, it's very possible that they don't know what they want, or in other words, they don't know what the greater solution might be. They're going to recommend a new button here, a new report there. So in one respect, you could say, yeah, they don't know what they want, but you have to come at it from the right direction, right?
But you can present, what they're good at saying is whether that is something I would want.
One of the, and we may have mentioned this in a previous AMA, but one of my favorite analogies that we use here at Pragmatic Institute is this idea of watching for them when they pick up a pencil. It comes from the software world, right? If you're observing somebody using a piece of software and they may not even realize they're doing it, but they suddenly pick up a pencil to jot something down. Well, why did they have to stop using your product in that moment? Yeah. What was going unfulfilled? What was the product not doing for them that they had to stop and go back to the more primitive form? That's not to say that the pencil isn't the best use in that moment, but at least now they may not know, but you saw a potential point of improvement, right?
Well, you know, and it speaks to something about users is we humans, we can get used to a lot of wonky things. You know, we put up with a lot. There's a lot of problems that we experience in our daily life that over time we stop paying attention to it because we get used to it. And what you're pointing at there, Eddie, is part of Nahito, is going out and interviewing people in their natural environment, and better yet, to some degree, being able to see a day in their life, whether it's a day in the life of using your product or whether it's a non-customer, but it's somebody in your target market that you would want to build a product for, you wish to use your product. You can see a day in their life. And if you, again, they're not very good at telling you what their problems are because they've probably gotten used to a lot of them. But as you describe, you know, maybe you see them pick up a pencil. They're in the middle of using your product. And one of our customers told the story that when they observed somebody using their product, they saw that they were highlighting a section of information in their product and doing a cut. They pasted it in an Excel spreadsheet and they were modifying it, and then they would do a cut and paste back into the product.
Yep.
And they saw this as a pattern. They went back through their enhancement request database, and what they realized is the data needed to be massaged in a way, and the product didn't support that. So they were using Excel as a means to do it. But there was not a single enhancement request asking for the data to be massaged in such a way.
That's beautiful.
And when they ask people, well, you're doing this, why are you doing it? And why didn't you tell us? They're like, well, we didn't think that's something you guys would be interested in doing. Didn't seem like a big deal, but it was something that they realized they could do and add some additional value. So by going out and seeing what people do, it can be much more powerful than just relying on what they think to tell you or what they think to say.
Well, I mean, it is absolutely clear that this is a topic with so much meat on it. I believe that was question 1, right? We've done one question so far. How about that? How about that?
You know what? I'm
just a couple follow-ups.
Here. I see.
Here's one. Katal's asking that one here, who says, does Pragmatic have a framework to assess product features against customer or market demand, what course would that be in? And are there some examples of it that we can view prior to the course?
So it's one of those yes and no answers. I will tell you, understanding the financial impact or the market demand of a particular feature is hard. Make this thing perform twice as fast as it did before, feature, adding this widget to a product. In order to know what the value of something, you've got to know why it's valuable. Just the fact that a feature does something, there's not inherent value in that. What you can do for a feature like that, and I'm thinking more of a larger feature, a larger capability of a product, is back to our previous conversation. You can go back to, let's say, that person who was massaging the data. If we added this capability for you in the product, what would that do for you? What would be the value of that? How much time would it save you? What would it enable you to do today that you can't do before? It's hard to have that level of a conversation around a particular widget or feature, but something of a greater capability of a product. We can not only figure out, would it be valuable, which is where I left the conversation, but okay, and what would be the value? Sometimes you can associate inherent value. I should not say I assign it. The people you're talking to can tell you what the economic value is to them. Another alternative to that is, all things being equal, what more would they be willing to pay for that, if anything? That's a way of parsing out nice to have versus, yeah, I'd be willing to pay for it. But again, it's really hard to do that at the feature level. When we think at a greater investment in a product, we do need to look at the size of the market, the potential impact financially of the market. And to answer your question, the class that we go into detail of being able to parse out these things, whether they are good ideas to pursue, and then whether the numbers really add up. What would it take for us to do it? What would be the cost incurred? What would be the value that the market would be willing to pay for it? That is the class called focus, right? Let's focus on the right things. Let's focus on the investments in our products that will have the business returns that we're looking for. But it really is more focused on a major update of an existing product, or the investment of a brand new product idea versus this particular feature. It's much harder to do that unless, that feature all by itself has some incredible impact to the buyers or users in your target market. But the thought process is the same. So that would be the focus class.
There you go, Katal. Hope that helped you. Todd, I'm going to jump over here to a question submitted by Michael, who asks, I want to implement scorecards for our product organization. What are some KPIs that are leading indicators that might be interesting for us to evaluate? For example, product usage, product marketing related. What do you think, Todd?
Oh, this is my favorite answer to any question. You ready? It depends. I know it's a cop out, but you know what? It does depend. Is the person who asked the question on the call?
I believe Michael submitted this one earlier, so they may not be here, or they may be watching on YouTube Live. Hard to say how many thousands of people are there.
It goes back to the conversation we had about the backlog. Is the leading indicators depend on what the trailing indicator is. So the trailing indicator being the major business objective. And you can kind of take major business objectives, and I'm going to simplify them, admittedly. You kind of roll a lot of business objectives into new revenue attainment from some quarters of the market. There are customer retention and customer renewal and customer revenue renewal objectives. There are other objectives that are more marketing focused, like product awareness, product perception. But if you kind of think of those as three categories, you've got to pick and know what, if your goal is to retain, a 90% renewal rate of existing customers at contract renewal, okay. Or that could be a revenue that, they're not only did they re-sign, but the revenue of the contract was equal or greater. We could set very specific end goals for that. Now, the leading indicators, we could look at things like customer satisfaction. If we have a 3-year agreement with our customers and we've got to wait till the end of that 3-year to see if they renew at the same level. If I was monitoring and doing an annual customer satisfaction survey, well, that could be a leading indicator of are we tracking to achieving that? If I'm going to go extreme here, we've got 95% customer satisfaction. Okay, that's a leading indicator. I'm probably going to feel pretty comfortable about getting that renewal in the next year or two. Versus on the other extreme, if we've got a high renewal objective and customer satisfaction surveys are in the lower double digits, that could be an indicator of some problem. Let's change the business objective. If we want to get net new revenue in some particular market segment, if we did a product, or how about a company awareness study for our brand? Do people know that we have a product that is aimed at them? We could do a survey of our buyer audience. And if we saw that we had low